My name's James, and this is my real life story. So, I'm a physics teacher. I work at a local secondary school. I've been a physics teacher for about 17 years, and I've been a Christian for just over 20 years. And when people find out that I'm both a physics teacher and a Christian, they often ask me things like, "Oh, I didn't think scientists believed in God anymore," or "I thought science and religion were opposites, so how can you be on both sides?" and questions like that. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think it's important first to say that I became a Christian when I was 19, and I was a physics student at the time. And I didn't become a Christian because I was investigating science. I became a Christian because I investigated Christianity for myself. So here's how it happened. So growing up, I had, I guess, a vague belief in God. I thought might well be something out there, but I didn't think about it very much, and I didn't really see why it would matter either way, and I certainly didn't see how it would be connected to me. Um, I was happy enough. I wasn't facing any really hard crisis in my life. Um, I was at university. I was studying physics. I was having a nice time. And yeah, one day, halfway through my first year, I met a guy who was a Christian, and he explained to me what Christianity was about, which I was interested in because I'd never really understood it. I felt like I ought to. So he started off by saying that this was God's world and he'd made it and he'd made all of us. And I thought that was fair enough. So he carried on and he said that we've all rebelled against God and we've all been selfish. And I couldn't really argue with that. So he carried on and he said that one day we would all have to suffer the consequences for our selfishness. And I didn't like that idea, but it seemed logical, so he carried on. And then he talked about Jesus' death on the cross and how that wasn't just a man dying, but that was how, on one particular day in history, God, in the form of a man, had taken this consequences and the punishment himself so that we didn't have to, even though we were the ones who'd been selfish, that Jesus had been perfect and he paid the penalty instead. And when I understood that for the first time, it was like it was like a light had gone on in my head, and suddenly I realized that it was very important and it did connect to me, and that if this was true, that my vague belief in some sort of God was not going to be good enough, that I would need to get right with God if he'd really done this for me. So I realized immediately that it was important. And so, yeah, I was a physics student after all. And so I decided to investigate for myself. I wanted to check that it made sense and it was logical. So I spent about 6 weeks going to various meetings and talks and discussions and yeah, asking Christians a lot of questions about science, but also about loads of other things. I wanted to make sure that I'd investigated it properly. And after about 6 weeks, I was convinced that it was true. Now, yeah, the logical thing at that point would be to become a Christian immediately, but it didn't work out that way. There was still a big part of me that really didn't like the idea of giving up control of my life and living for myself. And I realized that becoming a Christian meant giving my life to God and asking for forgiveness and living his way. And yeah, for about 3 weeks, these two things were really battling inside me. But yeah, in the end, I prayed one evening that God would forgive me, that Jesus would accept me, and that he would be in charge of my life. And that was the evening of March the 22nd in the year 2000. And I've been a Christian ever since. It was the best decision I ever made. So, what do I do with the questions about God and science? Well, there's a lot of detail that you can get lost in, and I don't really have time to go into all of it right now. But yeah, my big picture answer would be this: that a Christian can look at the universe and say, this is God's universe, and He's made it. He's made it with laws, and it's ordered and it's predictable. He's also made humans, and we've got the ability to understand the universe. We've got curious minds, we've got reason, we've got logic, and we honor God when we explore and investigate things and find out new stuff in His universe. So, yeah, a Christian doesn't need to be scared of scientific discovery. That God likes it when we make scientific discoveries because we're finding out more stuff about His world. There's a verse in the Bible that Christians, like Christians who are scientists, like to use, which is Psalm 111, verse 2, which says, "Great are the works of the Lord; they are pondered by all who delight in Him." Now, an atheist can look at the universe and say, there's no God, the universe is just here, and we're finding out about it, and we're just doing that for ourselves. I understand that. That's a different point of view. I don't agree with it because I believe there is a God, but neither of us have proved the other side to be wrong. These are two different worldviews, and I'm not a Christian because of science. I'm happy with the Christian answers to these scientific questions. And yeah, for people who aren't sure, I would just recommend that you investigate what are the foundations of Christianity, because that's what I did, and I was convinced that it was true. And that is my real life story.